Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me this Sunday. How's everyone doing? Great to see everybody online on this glorious Sunday. I don't know if you guys are enjoying the awesome weather that we're having, but definitely great weather here where I am. I hope you guys are enjoying some nice weather as well. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay and you can see me okay on your side, please, so we can get the technical issues out of the way if there are any. Everybody is looking forward to the Easter egg hunt today, hopefully. I want to say hi to all of my fellow inmates that are stuck at home. Hopefully, you're making the best of it and things are not getting you down. Hopefully, you're enjoying playing your guitar and making the best of it. You know, the way I look at it is that this is like an extended vacation. You know, how many of you wished the weekend would just continue throughout the week? Well, now you have your wish, right? So make the best of it, man. I was basically hoping to be able to get some time to rest, and this is kind of Mother Nature's way of saying take it easy. You know, it's not always about work. So today I got this semi hollow body guitar out for the occasion. I don't play my semi hollow body guitars enough, and so I figured I'd take this one out today and just plug it in. I'm actually plugged into my Fender Supersonic in the corner there. Unfortunately, I'm just mic'd up with my voice mic here, so the sound might not be the greatest. Plus, I'm not playing very loud because people are still sleeping and I don't want to disturb them. So basically, this guitar it looks a lot like a Gibson, but it's actually not. It's if you guys are wondering, it's a vintage. And although I have a Gibson as well, um, I tend to use this one in the around the house because less chance of it getting nicked and damaged. You know, I don't know if I'm the only one who does that, but it's one of those psychological things where if you have a really nice guitar, you want to take care of it. You want to make sure you baby it, and so that's the reason I bought this one mainly. It's because it's really the shape of it is really similar to a 335 Gibson. All of the features on it pretty much the same, and even the headstock. Headstock is tastefully done. I'm not really crazy about the this inlay that's over here. I don't know what that's supposed to represent. Kind of looks like a bouquet of flowers or something, but I'm not crazy about the Epiphone headstocks. So I could have got an Epiphone 335, but I decided to go with this instead. I got this used. I swapped out the pickups in here. I believe these are a set of Guitar Fetish pickups that I put in myself. They're loosely based on, I guess, the 57 Classic type pickups, which I like, and they sound pretty good. I like them. It was a pain getting everything in here. For those of you who have already worked on a 335, you'll know what I'm talking about. You basically have to shove everything in through the F hole here, and I know why they call it an F hole now, because you swear many times when you're trying to work and install everything through this friggin' hole. That's why they call it the F hole now. So that's just a little rundown on this guitar. I actually had it out because I was playing with some new stuff that I got. I'll talk to you about that a little bit later. I like the 335s also. If you dig into the string. Hopefully I'm not clipping the mic. So Today I wanted to talk about a couple of little things that we have going on. A couple of little things. First of all, I did a video yesterday regarding guitar tune-up tips because I was getting a lot of questions after I had made my videos where I was upgrading my son's Donner Strat. I don't know if you guys have seen those videos or not. There's a couple of them in the series, and basically I kind of started working on the guitar as a project. I actually got that guitar specifically to build it up, work on it, and modify it. I figured it was a good platform to start with because the price was pretty cheap, and honestly, you can't really get a good guitar body and a neck and a loaded pick guard for that kind of money anywhere. If you buy them individually and you buy the bridge and the tuners and everything else, it's probably going to cost you more. So I figured I'm going to try out that guitar and see whether or not I could mod it. And when I got the guitar, it actually played quite well. I was actually surprised considering the price on the guitar. So I decided to start to mod it, and I worked on a couple of different things, and I basically videoed the entire process and put it up on my channel for those of you that were considering possibly doing the same. And quite a bit of work it went into that guitar. Basically swapped out the single coil pickups in there. It was an SSH style configuration. The single coil pickups weren't great, so I swapped those out. I replaced the nut. I cut a new bone nut for it. I modified the headstock on the guitar, did a complete fret leveling on it, recrowning, polishing of the frets, and it's almost done. The only thing I have left to do, I actually decided to lacquer the neck. I have it over here. I actually reshaped the neck too. I didn't like the shape of the standard headstock. So basically I modeled the headstock after my Suhr guitar. Or Kramer. I think Kramer was using this type of headstock design possibly before Suhr was. Anyways, I reshaped it, gave it a more elegant look, and now it needs a decal. So I'm having somebody make a decal for me, custom decal, and to be able to apply the decal you have to basically bury it in some lacquer. So I decided to lacquer the neck. It's still rough, and I didn't go too heavy on the coats. You can see it's shiny, but it's not been polished or sanded yet, so there's still work to do on it. But that's going to happen in the next couple of days. Going to put the decal on it once it arrives and bury it in some lacquer, level sand it, and it should be ready to go. And I'm going to put the whole thing back together again and show you the final results. I think a lot of you have been following that project, and I want to show you the final results. We'll play the guitar and we'll hear it and see what the end result is. It takes a lot of time to do these things, but I enjoy doing it. It keeps me busy, you know. It allows me to focus on something else besides being cooped up. So let's see who's in the house so far. Adrian, good morning. Finn and the Sharks, how's it going? Thanks, man. I appreciate the nice comment, Finn. Jose is in the house. Christopher Thomas is in the house. Keith is in the house. Paul's in the house. Good morning, Paul. We already have a couple of questions, so maybe I should answer some of the questions in case you guys want to get your day underway and you don't want to stick around for the whole show. Actually, today I'm going to be a stickler. We're really going to make this show just an hour because I end up going quite long on some of my shows. 2 hours, even 2 hours and a half. That's a little bit too long. So 11 o'clock, we're going to end the show. So let's try and squeeze in as many comments and chit chat as we can during that hour. Make it a good one. All right, so let's see some of the questions here. So Fat Philosopher says Harley Benton has one like that for about $200. I'm pretty sure it's the same company that is making the Donner Strats that's making them for Harley Benton. Harley Benton basically gets guitars built for them that they private label with their name on it, right? So it's probably the same source supplier. I wouldn't be surprised. $200 is a good price, but you have to factor in shipping and duties and whatnot. So I'm pretty happy ordering off Amazon because they have a good return policy. If you get a dud for whatever reason, you can definitely. Oh, there's a thing that just popped up over my head over here. If you get a dud, you can return it without too many issues. So Christopher Thomas is saying that he's thinking about putting a Fender P-bass neck on a Squier-based body. P-bass neck, maple board, black P-bass body would use Duncans for the pickups. I like that idea. You can even go one step further if you want to save money and just get the Squier, and just if you don't like it because it says Squier on it, just take off the Squier logo and refinish the neck the way you want it to be. If you're really specific and you like the feel of the Fender neck, the P-bass neck, yeah, you could do that as well. I don't see an issue with that. I think a lot of people end up doing stuff like that. Saves money on a build, you know? David says he'd like a studio tour. My studio is not that crazy. It's pretty simple. There's not much here. Unfortunately, I can't move the camera because it's in my desktop here. I can just scooch out of the way a little bit. Here you have some guitars that are on my rack on the behind me here. Basically, I have this side here. Over here, you can see that I have a Friedman Dirty Shirley on a Marshall cabinet. Marshall's loaded with Celestion Vintage 65s. I also have Fender in the corner there. That's a Supersonic 22. You can see that. I have my tripod set up because I was doing some videos for some pedal reviews for you guys. I also have a Brunetti amp there on top of a 212 cabinet, and I have a bass breaker, and that's on top of a 112 cabinet. All my cabinets have custom. I've swapped out the speakers on all of my cabinets, so they're not standard speakers, but they work really well. And that's about it. I don't have all my guitars here. I just put up what I normally play, and keep it simple. Keep things out of the way because I'm often recording in this room, and it's not a big room to begin with, so if things get in the way, it just slows me down. So I try and keep things clean as much as I can. Sometimes it gets messy, but I try my best. Adrian says this guitar reminds him of Andy Scott from the Suite. I guess, yeah. It's kind of an iconic color. It's standard red that you see on most 335s. Same color as Chuck Berry and all that stuff. So of course I swapped out the pickups. What else could I do? Yeah, exactly. You know me. We've already had this discussion a couple of times, Fat Philosopher. I can't leave well enough alone. The funny thing is sometimes you go in a circle and you end up coming back to the beginning, and you figure and then you realize you had something good to start off with anyway. Henry Hartley says he uses a vintage SG for gigging. The funny thing about vintage is they don't have a distributor here in Canada. It's weird. I got this guitar used, so I don't know where it came from originally, and I believe this model's been discontinued. The new models on this guitar are slightly different. If you can see, this is basically a 335 shape, basic 335 shape. The new ones, maybe for copyright issues or legal issues, they've made the heads the horns offset. So one is slightly longer and one is slightly shorter. And then they did something funny with the heel to kind of give it like an angled look. That's more of like a modern take on a 335. They're great guitars though, and I really like the quality of them. I wish there'd be more floating around, but for some reason there aren't that many that I see on the used market, and I think maybe just because people hang on to them a little bit. So I don't know, but if you can try one now, you'll see they're very good, great value. Dennis says that he also has a vintage Lemon Drop Les Paul type guitar, which is based on the famous 59 owned by Peter Green and Gary Moore. That must be a sweet looking guitar. Is that a new guitar, or have you had that for a while? The funny thing is when you're trying to search for the vintage guitar brand, because the name vintage applies to vintage guitars in general, it's very hard to come across the actual vintage guitar made by Vintage, because all kinds of vintage guitars pop up, right? You have links to everything under the sun, and then you can't find the actual guitar brand, which I think is probably detrimental to their sales if you think about it. Who knows how many people actually are searching for their guitars and give up because they can't find it because everything else keeps popping up. Adrian's asking me what I think about the 335 from Harley Benton. I haven't tried it. I know a lot of people have and they like it. I'm not crazy about the shape because I do like the original 335 shape, which is this. The Harley Bentons have thinner horns here. Actually, this guitar's horns are probably just a little bit thinner than the actual original 335, but it's pretty close. The other ones are a little bit off, and maybe it's just me, but I'm partial to that look. So I was happy to find this guitar. But I'm sure they sound great. Um, have I ever done a rundown of your entire collection? If not, I would be interested in seeing. I know I did do a video at one point where I basically showed most of my guitars, but it was like a compilation where I was playing each one of them at the beginning of the video, and it was just like a couple of seconds of playing on each one, and I was going through a whole bunch, and that was the collection at that point. I'm sure it's changed since then. It's always evolving and changing. So there's guitars coming in and guitars going out on a regular basis over here. Um, but yeah, I should do an updated video on that. If you guys are interested, maybe I will. Fat Philosopher's asking a question. He says, I always play with the straps, so I own multiple straps and leave them on my guitars 24/7. Would this cause any damage in the long run? No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't, but it depends also on what kind of material your strap is made of. If it's made of fabric, excuse me, or leather, won't cause a problem. The only thing you have to be worried about is if you have some kind of rubber on cheaper straps or vinyl. Sometimes they could react with cellulose lacquer if you're putting it on a guitar that has a nitro on it. It could actually eat away at the nitro, but if it's leather, it shouldn't be a problem. I learned that the hard way. I had a guitar that had a nitro lacquered neck, and I put it on a guitar stand, and the rubber that goes around the guitar stand that holds the neck was this was an old guitar stand. At the time, it was being made of something else. Nowadays, they're pretty compatible, but in those that particular one wasn't, and it actually ate away a mark on the back of the neck, which was a bummer for me. But I guess you learn the hard way sometimes. Let's see who else is online. We got a nice group today. We have Joe online. Good morning. Um, Dorothy Collins is online. Good morning, Dorothy. Cool Tunes Made Easy. Nice to see you, buddy. Miriv. Nice to see you too. A couple of new faces. So it's great to see new faces and some familiar faces every week. Gospel of Mark's in the house. Hey man, glad you could make it. Ian Wolf is in the house as well. Great group here. I think we're gonna have a nice chat. So, um, as you can see, I finally found my Addicted to Gear T-shirt. I had I had one. This is an early one that I had uh, purchased for myself, but the newer ones that are on my swag store are actually a little bit different. I made the logo a bit smaller. This one's kind of big, but it's one of my favorite T-shirts I like to wear around the house and stuff. And I decided to break it out for this special occasion just for you guys, since it's Easter and all special occasion. If you guys are interested, there's a shameful plug. You can get this on my bottom of my videos. You can get stickers and cups and T-shirts and all kinds of stuff. If you want to support the channel, that's greatly appreciated as well. So there's still a lot more questions going on. I'm gonna pop in and out of these questions here and see which ones I can answer. So somebody's asking me what I think of the new Epiphones with the new headstocks, the new old headstocks, I guess. Um, and he says I have gas for the Epiphone Les Paul Classic worn metallic gold. You know, I'm happy that Epiphone decided to change the headstock on these guitars. It's still not a Gibson headstock, and I understand why they would do that, but I think it's better than the older one, in my opinion. I've tried Epiphone over the years. They're not bad. I mean, they're great guitars. They're not any worse than any other kind of knockoff Les Paul. And you'd figure that you can get something better from Gibson themselves, because they know how to build the guitars, right? They have the experience, but I'm pretty sure they're still built overseas. As far as the quality control on them, I can't talk about that right now because I haven't tried it myself. So I don't want to say it's great or it's not until I get a chance to see and play them myself. That is always the $1 million question with these guitars, right? So I think a lot of people are going to be happy to have a Gibson style guitar at a cheaper price, I think. I'm curious to try them. As soon as things get back to normal and I can get myself into a store, I will definitely give them a go and see how they feel. Finn and the Sharks is asking me whether or not PRS SE 245s are good guitars. Yeah, they are. They're, I mentioned this a couple of times in the past, and I don't hesitate to buy an SE guitar, especially if you can find one used somewhere. They're great value, built very well. I haven't had issues with my SE. I like it a lot. I have a semi hollow body one, and I don't have it out today, but I do have one, and it's great. And I also have an original US made PRS. And I said many times I usually play the SE more because again, I don't want to nick the other one, which is kind of strange. And this is a psychological thing I have to get over, but it's like you want to take care of your guitars so much that you don't end up playing them. So what's the point of buying great guitars, you know? I don't know if I'm the only one who feels this way, but that's just me. I guess it's one of my quirky things. Let's see. Let's go through a couple more questions. What do you think about the 7080 speakers? I have them on my Blackstar 212. They're not bad speakers. I like them. I think they're great for what they are. If you're not specifically looking for a specific tone out of your speakers, I think they do a little bit, everything kind of okay. I wouldn't say they're wow. They're a little bit more on the budget side, but they work well, and I don't see any issues with them. And also, you're asking the wrong guy because I like to mod everything and I like to switch out my speakers and pickups and everything. So, I'm never happy with what I have, but I've tried that speaker before, and I remember it being okay. It's a decent speaker. Hey Tim, happy Easter to you too, buddy. I hope you're doing well. Mariv says, you seem to like to mod your guitars. What is the most radical modification you've done? That's the thing. I don't go crazy with my mods because at a certain point, if you're going to go nuts, then it's not worth it because you're going to put more money into the guitar than it's worth. But I've basically built guitars from scratch. When I say from scratch, I don't mean from raw wood. I mean, I've purchased raw unfinished guitar bodies. I've stained them. I've finished them, put them together. Basically, built a guitar from parts from scratch, including paint jobs and everything, which is a lot of work. And it's very satisfying. It's gratifying. The only thing is that once it's done, especially if you're doing the paint work on it or the staining and finishing, you want to baby it because you've put so much time and effort into it, and I don't have special equipment to do this, so I do it by hand, raw, you know, elbow grease, and there's a lot of polishing and sanding that goes on to the process. So once that's done, you want to make sure you don't ding it or chip it or do anything crazy to it. So um, but yeah, I don't go too crazy with the mods. I keep it simple. Usually pickup swaps, nuts, fret leveling. If I want to refinish the guitar, I hesitate to refinish it. I usually will buy a guitar body already done, already finished the way it should be because that's a lot of work and I don't have spray guns and anything. So it's usually from rattle cans, and it's very difficult and time consuming to build up a finish enough through with rattle cans. So I leave it at that. Fat Philosopher says, I got more guitars than Cheap Tricks Nielsen. I don't think so. I don't think so. I'd love to, but no, that's not the case, unfortunately. So Dennis answered my question. He says he's had it for about 5 years. It's a distressed model, but they are also available in new condition. It's a great guitar, and the middle pickup is out of phase to give you that Peter Green sound. That's pretty cool. I wonder, are they still making these models, or is this discontinued now? Joe McCarthy says he has an Epiphone ES335 Pro in that color. Yeah, this is the popular color. I guess this is the color, right? Would have been nice if it had a little bit of grain showing through on this particular one, but it doesn't. My Gibson does. So Ian's asking me, what is the guitar that I sold that I missed the most? Good question. There's a lot of guitars that have come and gone over the years. I think one of the guitars that I regret selling, and I don't know if I miss it the most. Well, yeah, I guess I would. I do miss it the most from the guitars that I've had in the past is my G&L. I had a G&L Legacy that I bought back in the 90s. I don't remember exactly what year it was, but I kept that guitar for a long time. Beautiful guitar, honey burst finish, maple neck, played really, really well. This is when the G&L guitars were still, being made in the US. They were still being made largely by hand, and I paid that guitar. I think I want to say $1,900 back then, which was still a decent amount of change. And I still remember when I went to the store, I was looking for a Fender, and the guy's like, "Why do you want to buy a Fender?" This was his pitch, right? He's like, "Why do you want to buy a Fender, basically a copy, when you could buy a G&L made by the man himself?" And I kind of like thought about that for a minute. I'm like, yeah, I should try out this guitar. And the neck played really, really well. It was built flawlessly. The finish was amazing. And I think that's one of the guitars that I miss the most. That I probably, I would enjoy having in my collection right now. And Ian says, I bought a brand new PRS USA made Tremonti in 2001. I sold it about a year later because I needed the money, and I have regretted it ever since. Yeah, the Tremonti PRSs are great. The ones that I've seen, I saw one recently that came up on the used market, and it had a beautiful black flamed maple top. Looked really great, and I was trying to get that guitar. I would like to have that particular model if I can get a decent one. And yeah, I could understand why you regretted it. Have you replaced it with some other PRS, or did you end up getting a completely different model? Gussie's trying to not get cabin fever, man. Play your guitar, man. Just play. You won't be thinking about cabin fever, and if you still can't get cabin fever out of your mind, just crank up the amp a little louder. I agree, Henry. No point in keeping guitars in the cases. It's true. And then at the end of the day, it's just the first nick that's the worst, and then after that, it's fine. Then it's relic. It's worth more, right? Hey, Bruce. How's it going, man? What did you miss? Just some regular chit chat. You know how it is. Guitar gear. Fat Philosopher says he had a Kramer and he misses that guitar. Is that the like EVH style Kramer guitar, or was that a different one that you got there altogether? Finn, I'd like to be able to review the Epiphone Special if I can get my hands on one. Fat Philosopher's asking about Floyd Roses. Oy, oy vey. Um, I can help you a little bit with that. Anybody know about which ones are the good ones? If you can get the ones made in Germany, those are the good ones. You'll know you have one of the good ones because of the price. They're very expensive. The knockoffs or the license by Floyd is not the same. The components are not the same. The quality is not the same. And so those are the ones that you should avoid. It's hard to get a good price on the good ones. You're probably going to pay anywhere from 300 to 400, I guess, nowadays. So that's my 2 cents. And be prepared to spend a lot of time putzing around with the setup to get it just right. Bruce says he's got two regrets: original uh, Alembic Model 1 bass and 1956 Fender Esquire. And so, why did you let them go, Bruce? Just out of curiosity, I'm always curious to find out the backstory on these things and what tempted you to sell that thing. Fenders resell at a better price than the G&L. It's true, and I think it's a lot. Again, it's people that are looking at the logo as opposed to the quality of the guitar. Because I can tell you one thing, that G&L felt way better than most of the strats that I tried during the same time, especially back in the 90s. I wanted to also talk about a couple of questions that I had from a couple of viewers that watched my videos, and I promised them I'd answer their questions. Um, and there was actually a very good question by Tommy. He says what he wanted to know is that when I was showing the video and doing the work on my son's guitar, and I was showing how to cut the nut and how to get things set up properly, he wanted to know when I started cutting the nut, I didn't explain how to figure out where to start your first slot without being too far out. Okay, so I understand what he was asking me, and I'll try and explain it to you guys. And hopefully, Tommy will be watching the video later on. So when you're cutting a nut here, you have to start the low and high E strings somewhere, and you have to make sure that you're not too close to the edge of your fretboard. Otherwise, you have a tendency to, the string has a tendency to kind of slip off the edge of the fretboard. Same goes for the high string here. So there is a magic spot. Oh, there goes the first nick. There is a magic spot, and I usually like to keep my the low string and the high E string about, I would say, an eighth of an inch to a 16, not a 16, but a little bit more than an eighth of an inch in, because you have to also take into consideration the rounding of your frets. So the more your frets are shaped at an angle and rounded off, the more likely you will be to have issue and have the string roll off the edge. Okay, so that's basically my rule of thumb. But the way I like to work it is, before I actually cut the nut, I'll install the strings and actually place the strings and do a kind of a dry run to see where they work best. And you can already, even if the nut is not cut, you can already start to see what feels good to you. And that, along with this slotting ruler that I showed last week too. This is a ruler that's made of metal and has little slots in it. They're compensated so that as you make your slots, they start off wide and then they go a little bit narrow when they get to the thinner strings. And so using this and playing around with your strings, you'll be able to find the right combination. Of course, you can still make a mistake and cut it in the wrong location, which means you would have to start over again. But generally, after doing it a couple of times, you will get a feel for it, and you'll know exactly where you need to start the strings. So that's what I wanted to say about that. And then Robert White also had a really great question that I wanted to address, and he says, "Thank you for all your videos. Do you think it would be of any value to hear what different guitars sound like unplugged?" And what he means by that is what the pickups might be working with to start, as a way of knowing how much different guitar configuration and woods have to do with wood tone, opposed to just what the pickups get from mostly the magnetic sense of the strings. So how much of what there is to begin with in terms of a sound can the pickups translate to the sound of the amp? So all that to be said, we're getting on the verge of talking about like tone woods and stuff like that, that I kind of want to avoid that conversation. But I think it's very important to be able to at least try the guitar unplugged, so that you can at least feel whether or not the guitar is resonant or not. Because I've tried guitars in the past that sounded very dead. What I mean by that is that they didn't vibrate very well when you were playing them unplugged. Now, I'm not saying that a guitar that vibrates more than another will sound better once you factor in pickups and electronics and everything else, because there's a lot of different aspects to a guitar's sound. But it's definitely worthwhile when you're in a music store to try out a guitar, even though it's not maybe a semi-acoustic guitar. And I'm not talking about acoustics here, I'm talking about electric guitars. At least to try them out and see how they resonate. Because I do feel that, that is a very important aspect of any guitar, and it shouldn't be overlooked. And then, of course, you can tailor your sound with pickups and bridges and nuts and strings and everything else. And once you factor in all those other things, it basically becomes a more complex tone. But it is a good starting point to try and get a guitar that that works well. And I said the tone word, but we're not getting into the tone wood discussion right now. Okay, let's just leave it at that. So I have a question for you guys, since you're asking me a lot of questions. I have a question for you, and that is, was there ever a time where you instantly regretted a purchase? And so, you thought you'd get a good deal, you thought you'd love that guitar or amplifier that you purchased, maybe something new or used, and when you bought it, brought it home, you immediately realized you had made a mistake. It's happened to me a couple of times, but I'm curious if you guys have any stories like that. Bud wants to know if I have any advice for removing a strat neck, no access to adjust tension without doing so. Well, my only advice to you is to be careful. I know it seems stupid, but I mean, um, I understand what you're saying. A lot of those strats have the adjustment for the truss rod at the bottom of the neck, over here, basically. More of those, the vintage style guitars have them here, which I don't like. Sure, they're true to vintage specs, but they're not the best. That's why Leo eventually moved it and put it up here. But if you do have the truss rod adjustment there, there's nothing you can do. You have to remove it and adjust the neck. And so a lot of people, some people say that you don't have to necessarily remove all the screws. You can just loosen them and tilt it and adjust it and put it back. I don't like to do that because you risk, making the holes at the back of the neck larger, and then you don't have a good joint anymore. Sometimes the holes could be stripped out, so you have to just basically take it out. And also, when you're taking out the neck, be very careful not to twist it this way when it's in the pocket. Try not to twist it like this, because you have a good chance of cracking the finish on the edges of the neck. That happens often on strats, more often than you think. So you basically want to make sure you just pull it up and remove it, or pull it forward and remove it. If there's any kind of resistance when you're trying to pull out the neck, be super careful, be gentle, and you won't have any issues. It really is a pain when you're dealing with a guitar like that, because it's a lot more cumbersome to make these adjustments, especially when they're just like little adjustments. That's why I kind of avoid those now if I can. I wonder how long it's going to take Seymour Duncan to come in while we're in lockdown. It seems like everybody's kind of delayed, and everybody's working with issues in terms of the supply chain. And I've ordered a couple of things that were being shipped to me, and it's taking forever to get here. I figured I would have some stuff in by a week, maybe a week ago or 2 weeks ago even, and it still hasn't come in. And it's just coming in from the States, and it's just like a local guy sending me some stuff, and it's not even like he didn't even have issues, getting the stuff, and it wasn't coming from somewhere else. So it's like, I think even regular post is very slow. So you got to be patient. Christopher says, "Yeah, if the guitar doesn't sound good unplugged, I don't like it." Yeah, I'm the same, man. Adrian Guitar Junkie says, "I don't understand your question." Okay, never mind. It's okay. A lot of people don't understand my questions, including my wife. Bought a hundred watt Fat Philosopher, you always make me laugh, man. I bought a 100-watt amp, and my family told me too loud. Took it to a gig at a 2,000 seating auditorium, and they still said it was too loud. Yeah, that's one of the mistakes I made too. Unfortunately, it wasn't a 100-watt amp. It was only a 50-watt amp, but it was still friggin' loud. And actually liked that amp a lot. I didn't regret it, but it was friggin' loud. And eventually, I had to sell it for something that had a little bit more controlled volume. My biggest regret was I had once purchased a Mesa Boogie Stiletto, and it was a head, and it looked great. It had, all the mojo going in terms of looks, and it looked mean, looked well built, and you know Mesa makes great amplifiers, and I had a feeling it would be cool. So I bought that amp, and as soon as I brought it home, it was so spiky, and the treble was so cutting. That's why they call it a stiletto, I guess, because it really cuts through the mix. But it really sounded harsh to me, and it bothered me so much. I got rid of it. I think within a week, I just got rid of it, and I don't regret it. But that was one of the immediate regrets that I had. Alan says, if you see crafted in China, don't buy it. I don't know if I agree with that, Alan. I don't know. I've had situations where guitars were made in, crafted in China, crafted in Japan or Indonesia, and they were actually very good instruments. So the analogy I like to use is like you can buy anything from China. You can get really crappy knockoffs. Like if you take the example of an iPhone is made in China, and you can get really high quality products from China if you're willing to pay for them, and you can also get garbage from China. So you have to be careful, because if you're buying a knockoff of something made in China, you probably will not get good quality. But if a guitar manufacturer is located in China and distribute throughout the world, uh, oftentimes their products are pretty good, especially today. Just reading through some of the comments, there's a lot of interesting chit chat here. Joe says he has a few Eastman guitars made in China, and they're great. I know I was trying to get an Eastman guitar. I wanted to review them because everybody is telling me how great they are, but so far no luck. I'm gonna try. Continue trying. William says Japan makes great guitars. Yes, I agree with that. Tokai's, I have two of them made in Japan, great guitars. So Fat Philosopher's asking me, he says, many people say that a HSS pickup setup is better than a HSH setup, and do you agree? So my answer to that is yes and no. The reason I say that, I have a couple of guitars that have a humbucker in the bridge and then the two single coils. The tricky thing with an SSH configuration is getting the electronic aspects balanced between the humbucker and the single coils, because normally a humbucker will want to works well with a 500k pot, and the single coils work well with a 250k pot. So when everything's on the same circuit, how do you balance that? So nowadays they do sell special pots that will allow you to go between 500k and 250. But a lot of companies don't use that. You can also do some fancy wiring tricks where you use capacitors to cut the um, the values when you're working with the single coils as opposed to the humbucker. You have to do that on the switch. So there's a couple of fancy like wiring techniques that you can use to do that, and that's just, if you leave it as is and just leave a 500K pot, it might not sound great on the single coils. It might sound great on the humbuckers. So you have to, it's a little bit of give and take there to find the right balance. On the other hand, the HSH configuration, to me, I don't like it that much, and it's just from a functional standpoint. Because when you have two humbuckers and then you have a single coil in the middle, you don't have very much space to pick without hitting a pickup. And it's kind of, I'm not crazy about that configuration myself, and it's just from a functional aspect, not a sound aspect. I feel that the humbucker and the two single coils gives you a little bit more space for your pick, and I always end up hitting the middle pickup when I'm dealing with two humbuckers and a single coil, unless you drop the single coil pickup way low. So that's just my 2 cents. Ralph is asking me if I prefer a one-piece maple neck over an added fretboard type. I love the one piece. It seems a bit more sustainable. Yeah, is that a word? I think it's a word. Yeah, one piece. That's what I had on my G&L. But often you have to be careful, because often it looks like a one piece, but it's actually not. What they do is they'll cut the fretboard from one piece of wood, then glue it back together again, so it looks, the grain matches up nicely, and you could hardly tell that it's been cut. But they have to put in, obviously they have to put in the truss rods somehow, right? But yeah, if you can get a one piece neck, that's pretty good too. And then William says, would this 500K to 250K pot be for split coil pickups? Yeah, you can use them for split coil pickups as well. That's usually a push pull, so that when you split the coil, then it automatically goes to 500K, sorry, 250K, and when you pop it back in, it goes to 500. Finn and the Shark says, "Do I still have the Ibanez Gem Junior?" No, that's one of the guitars that I sold. Why did I sell it? I just, it Ibanez. When you're dealing with a guitar model like an Ibanez Gem, people expect you to play like Steve Vai, and I don't play like Steve Vai. It's a fun guitar, nonetheless. I enjoyed having it, and anybody that is interested in picking up that Vi type guitar at a much lower price, definitely would be cool to get the Gem Junior. Not the same quality as the Gem. Obviously, there's a reason why you pay a lot more money for it. You can't expect it to be the same, build quality as a guitar that sells for like what now? Like I think close to $5,000, $6,000, something like that. So yeah, but it's a great, it's a fun guitar nonetheless. So Bruce says he has a Gretsch, a G5422TG, made in Korea. Construction seems to rival or exceed most of my USA guitars. And that's precisely why I said what I did earlier. You really have to play the guitars to see the difference. The quality is getting quite good. And when the guitar companies are using good quality machinery as well as good quality skilled labor, um, they rival the stuff made in the States. I don't think you'd be able to tell if you had your eyes closed, or even if you had your eyes open. As long as you're not looking at where it's made, you wouldn't be able to tell. Yeah, somebody here saying I once bought a guitar with a stripped truss rod. Now I make sure to check it. This is one of the things when when you're dealing with buying used guitars. I always it's sometimes awkward to do this because people don't like you messing around with the guitars when you're trying them out. But bring a set of Allen keys with you. Definitely check the truss rod, because if the truss rod is stripped, it could be repaired, but it's a pain in the butt and it takes time and effort to do so. So you can save yourself a lot of trouble just by checking that out when you're going to buy a used guitar. And here's one of the questions I also had for you guys as well is how many of you out there are reluctant to buy anything used? And the reason I asked this question is I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and he's very adamant about not buying anything used. He feels kind of like, it's you're getting the sloppy seconds of someone else because the guitar, was used for a long time and now you're bringing it home and it's got somebody else's DNA on it, and you don't want to do that. You'd rather pay extra but get something brand new straight from the store. Are there any of you like that out there? Personally, my opinion on that is I love used gear because I'm cheap. Okay, not cheap. I'm frugal. And I like to save money on gear, and you can get amazing deals if you just look online. There's always deals happening. Even nowadays, with this virus going on, people are trying to liquidate stuff because they need the money. And there's also companies out there that are selling their instruments at a discount, trying to stimulate the market because people are not buying right now. So there's great deals to be had, and you can definitely take advantage of that if you're willing to act fast. And I've snagged up some really amazing deals over the years, and I don't regret them at all. They've actually increased in value over time, and I, you know, I'm a big fan of used stuff. It's like I get a rush when I can get an instrument that I know is worth more than what I paid. Yeah, that's a good idea, Gussie. He says you can ask the owner to adjust the truss rod in front of you, and they usually don't have issues doing that. Yes, that's an excellent idea. I'll keep that in mind for next time. Dorothy says I'm a pawn shop shopper, and everything I do is through the pawn shops, and buying used. I couldn't afford it, no other way. Now this here's the thing about pawn shops, Dorothy, and this correct me if I'm wrong, but at least here in Canada, there's a lot of chain pawn shops around, but I find that they're not the deals are not that great because they know the value, they do the research, and they know what they're selling. They might not be experts in guitars, but they have a book value that they go by. And the actual deals in pawn shops, at least in my experience, haven't been that great. On the other hand, dealing with people, you can always haggle, you can always work out some kind of a deal. And most people, when you're there in person, ready to buy, and you ask them to knock off $50 or something like that, they'll usually do it. Gussie says vintage gear is reduced substantially in the last week. Yeah, sure, because vintage gear is a seller's market, buyer's market. I mean, vintage gear is only worth what it's worth if somebody's willing to pay for it, right? If somebody's not willing to pay for it, the prices go down. It's normal. I think everybody's on a budget right now. This is the thing where you can window shop, but I don't know how many people are actually going to buy guitars right now because they need that emergency fund. They don't know what the future holds or how long we're going to be in this dilemma, and you can't afford to splurge. And I've cut back my buying, at least for the time being. Not that I need more guitars, but I still look and I still buy some stuff. Actually, I bought something I wanted to share with you guys because somebody on the last chat recommended that I check this out, and that's the Mosky or Mosky, I don't know how you pronounce it, Mosky Plexi M. So this is the little Plexi style distortion pedal. This is actually what I was playing through right now, and I don't know if you can hear it. I'll just play a little bit through it. So here's the thing. This pedal is like 30 bucks, okay? I'll do a review, a full review on it on my channel if you guys are interested, okay? But it's 30 bucks. I mean, it's a $30 pedal. You can't expect too much out of it, but it actually sounds pretty good. Now, here's the kicker. The guitar pedal by itself is a little bit fizzy sounding, but if you pair it up with an EP booster, which I have on my board, sounds fantastic. And I was actually blown away by it. And I said, man, for 30 bucks, can't go wrong with a pedal like that. And it has a lot of gain on tap, but it also clears up nice. I'm playing too low to show you that, but if you play it at a regular volume and you play around with your volume knob on it, you can actually get a nice clean sound out of it. And right now I can't do it because my amp is really low. But it works really nice, and I appreciate the tip. So I listened to you guys. You know, I didn't know about this pedal, but when somebody recommended I check it out, I ordered it, and I'm gonna share it with you guys. So if you're interested in checking it out, that'll be on an upcoming video. Today I'm gonna be putting up a video, if not today, maybe tomorrow, talking about top 10 tips that I have regarding issues that you can have with your guitar, and when to know when it's time to actually do an adjustment on your guitar. Because I get those questions all the time. I get those questions. People ask me like, I'm getting buzzing on my frets. You know, what's the issue? How can I fix it? Or you know, I'm getting my frets are worn down. What can I do about it? Or how do I know if the nut is cut properly? Or there's a lot of different issues that people have with their guitars. And I made a video of the top 10 questions I get, and basically just to tell you what the issue could be and where you can look to find the problem or to resolve the problem. And I think it'll be helpful for a lot of you that are doing your own guitar work. And even if you're not doing your own guitar work, at least you're able to know what the issue is, and you won't be taken advantage of by some dishonest guitar tech and asking you to spend a lot of money when it's a quick fix that you can probably take care of yourself. William, that's the one, Mosky, Mosky. I bought it off Amazon. Philip says pawn shops tried to offer me 150 bucks for a guitar that was worth almost 1,000. I walked out. They're gonna take advantage of you. I mean, you definitely don't want to be a seller at a pawn shop, and you probably don't want to be a buyer at a pawn shop either, because either way they're gonna take advantage of you. Bruce is asking me, what do I know about the Ampero versus the Ampero 1? Honestly, Bruce, right now I'm not a big master on the Ampero 1. As far as I know, the main difference on the Ampero 1 is just one less button. It's a simplified console. And as far as I know, what's under the hood is possibly the same. I'm hoping to get my hands on one so I can compare it to the Ampero that I have here. So the main difference on that is probably the price. Dorothy says I have two Eclipses right now. An Eclipse 1000, $1,000. X Ride at the price. Adrian says he had mold on the fretboard of my American Strat. A guitar builder was able to repair. How did you get mold on the neck? Did you like was it exposed to moisture, or was that a humidity problem? Yuck. I've had issues with molds in guitar cases that I've purchased. Let's say I bought a guitar used and it came in a case, and the case was stored in a very humid closet in the dark. And sometimes you'll get mold buildup on the actual case, especially on these tweed cases, the vintage cases. And it's a pain to get rid of. It smells too. I mean, you have to take care of that. It's not good for your health. Pawn shops here sell anything good on the web. The stuff in the store is usually junk. It could be good, but are they selling it for a realistic price, or are they trying to highball you? That's the thing. It's like, where do you get the deals nowadays? eBay used to be good. Now it's like not so good anymore. The fees are too high. Reverb, I've never purchased anything off Reverb myself personally because I feel like you're not getting a good deal. There's also fees, and sellers want to recoup their fees. And pawn shops, I don't know. My experience with pawn shops, not good. So the only way I get deals is through dealing directly with the end user, with the seller, and local deals mostly. Adrian says I've had this Strat since 1992. The last year's mold came out on some frets on the fretboard. I don't know why. Well, maybe if there's DNA on your fretboard and you don't clean it off, and it's put into an enclosed space where it's very high humidity, will definitely cause mold to happen. You can also take your guitars and your cases that have mold on them and just put them out into the sun. And usually the UV will actually get rid of that for you instead of having to spray it with bleach or something more aggressive. Paul says, now is the time for the best deals on used guitars, but take your time. They will only get even cheaper. I have friends in high places. The C19 Strats say 19 months from now before it's safe. Stats, sorry, I read Strats. Yeah, so basically 19 months from now before. Yeah, that's what I hear too, Paul. It's going to be a long, drawn out process before the C19 virus goes away. And so I guess people will get desperate at a certain point if they're not working, and they'll need to liquidate some of their stuff to be able to generate some cash. So, yeah, you might be able to get some deals. That is, if you're not strapped for cash yourself. It's like the old saying, when the economy's down, it's the best time to buy stocks. That's if you have cash to do that, right? So Dorothy has connections. That's why you're getting the good deals, Dorothy. I see. So I need connections too. Yeah, I guess if you're friends with the pawn shop owners, they'll give you a call when they get something good if they know they can get rid of it quick. So that's what I need to do. Fat Philosopher says he's lowballing Reverb as much as he can. How successful are you with that? I mean, are people receptive to lowball offers on Reverb? Alan's absolutely right. He says when you're buying used, trust your instinct. Walk away if you don't like this, if you don't like the seller. And that's absolutely true. I got one guy that came to me and he wanted to make a deal. He wanted a Strat that I had, and he was offering me two Telecasters. And I'm like, okay, I can't really see what you're offering me from the pictures, you know. And he's like, I'll come and I'll bring them so you can see them in person. And I'm like, okay, fine. So he shows up at my house with these two Telecasters, and they were clearly like parts casters that were not authentic or real Fender guitars in any way. And he was just trying to get them, get a deal where he can get a Strat for two relatively cheap guitars. So I politely said no, thank you, and sent him on his way. And the other thing is, if you're dealing with used gear, what I would say is do your homework, because believe it or not, a lot of people out there are selling stuff that they don't even know what they have or what it's worth. The cabinet that I have behind me, the the Marshall cabinet there, this Marshall cabinet I bought used, and I think I paid it 350 at the time, something like that. And it's not in the best condition. It's obviously been used. It's not pristine, but the guy didn't know what speakers he had in there. And these are original Celestion 65s. They're made in England, and they're not the Chinese knockoffs that they're selling today. And just just the speakers in that cabinet are worth a small fortune right now. They sound great. Um, so he didn't know, and I actually didn't know either, because I didn't open it up. It was actually a lucky find. When I brought it home, I opened it up, and I'm like, wow, you know, I was super happy about that. But I'm sure if he knew, he probably wouldn't have sold it or sold it for that price. The same thing happened to me when I bought the Japanese Tokai. I had bought a Japanese Tokai that, well, two times I actually lucked out on those Japanese Tokais because they're great guitars. So one time I ended up, a guy was selling this Japanese Tokai that I love, and he was asking 600 bucks for it, which was relatively cheap. And I'm calling, can't get through to him. It was still listed, so I said to myself, I'm going to keep trying to contact this guy. And I must have called like 40 times. Eventually, he answers the phone and he's like, yeah, sorry, I wasn't able to answer you earlier or sooner because I was in a car accident and I was in the hospital and I just got out. So I'm like, all right, sorry to hear that. Do you still have the guitar? And he's like, yeah, I still have the guitar. So I met up with him, and finally we made the deal. And because he was in the hospital and he had a car accident and his car needed to be repaired, and he wasn't in the best of condition himself, he decided to I offered him a lower price, and he took it, and I actually got a fantastic deal on that guitar. And the same thing happened with another Tokai guitar, which is my Black Beauty version. And the thing is, I knew that guitar was a Japanese Tokai, but the seller wasn't sure. And the thing with the Tokais is that if you don't know what you have, it's hard to get the information and to verify whether or not it's actually a Japanese guitar or not. So I basically, you know, I tried my luck with him, and I'm like, look, I don't know what it is, and I don't know if it's actually a Japanese Tokai or not. And if you can't prove it, like, I can't offer you top dollar. And he didn't know what he had, and he couldn't prove it. So, he ended up taking my offer. Is that dishonest? I don't know if it's dishonest, but you know, information is power, and when you have the information and you know what you're looking at, you can make a better judgment, and you can make a better judgment call, and sometimes you end up on top. Bruce says nobody wants big cabinets anymore. You can get them for a song. That's true. You can get them for a song, but depending on what kind of speakers are inside, you're not going to get them for a song. If you try and buy a cabinet with four, say, greenbacks or creambacks, you're not going to get them for a song. You're still going to pay them a lot of money. If you buy a cabinet that's press wood, MDF, with crappy speakers in it, yes, you can get them for a song. Fat Philosopher, the Korean Tokais are okay. I would say that they're on par with the Epiphones, but they're not as good as the Japanese ones, in my opinion. Paul, you're back in. What do you want me to buy today, Paul? I was actually talking about you earlier when I said that I bought the Moskai. Moskai? I don't know how you pronounce these things. Why do Jap or Chinese companies always find ways of naming their products things that are difficult to pronounce? Anyways, I got the Plexi M. Plays great. I was just playing it earlier. I don't know if you heard that or not. Reverb. Paul says Reverb and all the sites have deals, but you have to put in the time to scan by endless rip-offs. The best deals come near month's end when sellers are often desperate to pay bills. That's a good tip. Henry, you're absolutely right, man. Those Japanese tokais are great. They don't pop up often though. If you actually find one and you can get one for under $1,000 today, you're in luck because the now people know what they're worth and they're paying a lot more money for them, or they're asking a lot more money for them as well. That's because it's not difficult to pronounce if your native language is Japanese. I wonder if some of these Chinese names that they're using on their products have a hidden secret meaning, if they're laughing at us. I agree. I know that, especially the V sound, like Louis Vuitton. They can't distinguish between L and R. What do you mean? Do you mean the letter L and R or left and right? Yeah, I know that trick, Bruce. Check to see how long an item has been listed, and if it's been there a long time, chances are the seller will be a little bit more open to negotiating with you. Gussie's looking forward to cranking up his Friedman with it. Yeah, it's really hard to play the Friedman at a low sound, a low volume. It just begs to be opened up. Hey John, nice to see you in the house from the UK. You really don't know? I don't know, but I like fried rice. Is it fried rice or fried lice? It's the R's, I think, right? Yeah. I'm just joking around with. Yeah, you know who really does a good impression of the Chinese and the Japanese is Russell Peters. When he has his stand up, he's like bang on with all the nuances of the way people pronounce the words, and he cracks me up every time. Well, guys, it's past the time we said we were gonna quit. I said I was gonna quit at 11 o'clock. It's actually 11:21 now. So we're gonna start wrapping it up and just call it a day. I think a lot of you have plans for Easter, at least with your family. Maybe you need to make a lunch, or get supper ready, or start planning for supper. And so we're gonna wrap it up. I'll take a couple last questions here, and then we'll call it a day. All right. Adrian says, "What music do you guys play in your band?" Mostly classic rock, but we throw in a couple of modern tunes as well. We don't necessarily stick to one particular thing. It's whatever, the majority rules. So if if a couple of people want to play a certain tune, we'll learn it. Thanks, Joe, and thank you for tuning in. I hope you're gonna tune in next time as well. Bruce, you need a an Ampero. Get yourself a Hotone or a Hot One, whatever you want to call it, so you can play with your headphones, and it doesn't matter whether the house is full or not. You can still simulate that cranked experience just by playing through the multi effects unit. Sweet dreams, Fat Philosopher. Hope you get a good night's sleep. Thank you for tuning in. Henry, it's okay. Henry's saying it's 4:20 in the UK, so 4:20 means you're gonna be having supper soon. So enjoy your supper. Tea time. Paul said you can get Chinese tokais for about $300. Where can you get these Chinese tokais for $300, Paul? Just wondering. Probably eBay, right? I'm always worried about going with the Chinese tokais because originally the tokais were made in Japan. Then you started seeing tokais being made in Korea, and now you're starting to see the Chinese tokais. And I'm always worried that the Chinese tokais are just knockoffs of the real thing. It's hard to tell today. Thanks for tuning in, Alonzo. I try and provide as much info as I can during these sessions here. Adrian is it's afternoon in Austria. Thanks for tuning in, Adrian. Appreciate that, man. You too, Paul. Stay safe, man. He says we need you. Well, I need you guys too. I can't have my show all by myself, and I appreciate you guys tuning in. So if you have the Boss GTU 1000, you can use that even when the wife is yelling at you. Just put the headphones on, and you're good to go. Gussie says Canada Express sells tokais for great prices from China. I'll have to check that out. Paul says Music Express Canada. I'll have to take a look at that too, Paul. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate those kind of words, and thank you for tuning in. All right, guys, that's it for today. Thank you once again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I always look forward to the Sunday sessions. We'll have another one next Sunday and recap from where we left off. Hopefully, we'll be a week for closer to getting over this virus thing, and everybody will be hopefully getting back to normal. Keep your fingers crossed. I know it doesn't seem likely, but you never know. Hopefully, they'll have some vaccine ready for us soon, and we'll be able to get cracking on that and take advantage of the things that we miss so much. In the meantime, guys, keep playing your guitars, stay tuned, keep rocking. There'll be more stuff coming your way. Please watch the videos that I'm going to be putting on this week. I think you're going to like them. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please take a moment and subscribe. Always looking forward to more viewers and more subscribers on my channel so that we can have these wonderful Sunday get-togethers with more people online. All right, that's it, guys. Thank you. See you soon.